So it is bright and early on a Saturday morning here, and I wanted to get into this commentary just to go over the standings. Because right now, the NHL wildcard race is heating up on both fronts. It's a war on two fronts, if you wanted to say that. The Eastern wildcard is tightening up for that final spot. Ottawa has it on lock in the first spot there, but second spot could be anybody's game. Detroit has fallen out. Columbus is falling out. New York Islanders, they're in there. The Rangers, the Canadiens, all kind of rotating around the block there. The Western Conference has a similar fate. You've got the Minnesota Wild in the first wild card, and I don't think anybody's really going to doubt them at this point in the season, being behind Dallas, Winnipeg, and Colorado. But that final wild card spot in the West is pretty up for grabs. Utah, St. Louis, Vancouver, Calgary. All four teams are in there trying to make that final wild card push. And there are some other teams that are barely on the outside looking in. Like, I think Anaheim has a 0.1% chance of making the wild card. It's not going to happen, but, you know, mathematics do exist in their favor here to not totally being eliminated. It is going to be a wild race, though, for the final few wildcard spots. And this video is going to go over an update in regards to one of these Western matchups. This show is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go out there and check out that first link in the description to save some money on your VPN, get some free months, and support this YouTube channel in the process. I'm making this video because I wanted to refer to a post. This was made by DFF Canuck on the Habs subreddit. And he went out there and said this: the Calgary Flames have a 16% chance of making the playoffs and an 8% chance of getting a top 10 pick. This means the Habs have a 76% chance to get pick number 11 to 16 from the Calgary Flames. Now, that sounds kind of weird at first. Okay, 16% chance of making the playoffs, that's one thing. 8% chance of a top 10 pick. How does that have any correlation with Montreal? Well, let's dive into it. I know some of y'all might not necessarily be here from the beginning, so if you needed the scoop, this is what you got. Right now, the Montreal Canadiens have 2 draft picks in the first round in the 2025 draft. They have their own, which is going to be whatever. It's the Montreal Canadiens' own first-round pick. But they also have a pick from the Calgary Flames. Let's take a look at these trade details here. On August 18th, 2022, the Montreal Canadiens acquired Sean Monahan and a conditional first-round pick from the Calgary Flames for future considerations. Yeah, that's right. This draft pick that we are talking about was literally sent to Montreal 3 years ago. We made a video talking about Sean Monahan getting traded to the Habs. It was a really big deal. Monahan had fallen out of favor with the Calgary Flames, and he was a really good player playing with Johnny Gaudreau and Yuri Hudler of all people, and then Monahan was hurt so much, so Johnny Gaudreau ended up moving on to playing with Matthew Tkachuk and Lindstrom, and they were really good there, but Monahan was totally out of the picture, so unfortunately for him, he got traded with a first-round pick to Montreal for nothing. And good for Montreal. They were able to actually get lots of value out of Sean Monahan. He was a good player, and he ended up reviving his career in the years that followed in Winnipeg and eventually Columbus. Now Monahan is hurt again, which is why he hasn't played for the Blue Jackets since whenever it was he last suited up for them. But still, Monahan is a much better player with a lot more of a positive reputation compared to when he was in the Calgary Flames organization. It's why he got sent over to Montreal with a first for nothing. But back in that time frame, the details came out as follows. Here are the conditions on that pick as of March 4th, 2025. If both Calgary's 2025 first and Florida's 2025 first are not in the top 10, Montreal receives the earlier of the 2 picks. If Calgary's 2025 first is top 10 and Florida's 2025 first is not top 10, Montreal receives Florida's 2025 first. If Florida's 2025 first is top 10, and it shifts to 2026 as part of the Matthew Tkachuk trade condition, Montreal receives Calgary's 2025 first. Unless it is first overall, then Montreal receives Calgary's 2025 third, and the better of Calgary and Florida's 2026 first. Now, you might be thinking, what the hell? What does that have to do with this? Yeah, I know. It's tough, guys. It's tough. The Florida Panthers first-round pick in 2025 does belong to the Calgary Flames. It's in the Matthew Tkachuk trade, conditional fourth-round picks getting swapped around 3 years ago. So this entire situation is not set in stone yet. Some people that are smarter than me are going to be able to look at this and go like, yeah, okay, that's exactly what's going to happen. If this, and this happens, then Montreal gets this first. But ultimately, the Montreal Canadiens, if we assume Calgary is going to finish lower in the standings than Florida, which, come on, it's going to happen like that. The Montreal Canadiens are probably going to receive Calgary's first-round pick this year. If we go one by one throughout each of these trade stipulations, if both Calgary's 25 first and Florida's 25 firsts are not in the top 10, Montreal receives the earlier of the two picks. Okay, whichever one is closer to 10 without being in the top 10, Montreal will get. If Calgary's 2025 first is top 10 and Florida's is not, Montreal will receive the Florida pick. Okay, great. If Calgary gets a top 10 pick and Florida doesn't get one, Montreal gets Florida's pick. And then the last one we can ignore because Florida's first round pick is not going to be top 10 this year. They're too good. Essentially what this means is, if the Calgary Flames miss the playoffs, they will be in the 1 to 16 part of the draft. And if the Calgary Flames end up not making the top 10 in the draft, then Montreal will get a pretty high draft pick. That's essentially what it means. Let's go over to tankathon.com and take a look right here. The Calgary Flames currently have the 18th overall projected pick because by points percentage, they are in the playoffs. It's kind of weird because St. Louis and Vancouver are both in there, but it will round itself out as the days come and go. If Calgary just totally doesn't blow it and they finish below Boston, Anaheim, or Pittsburgh and finish top 10 in the draft lottery race, then Montreal could get themselves a pick, best case scenario, in the 11th or 12th overall spot. It's pretty tight between Columbus, Detroit, Utah, Calgary, New York, and Vancouver there. So I think this is a double whammy here because for my Vancouver Canucks, obviously I am cheering against Calgary in that wildcard race. But now, as a Montreal Canadiens fan, there's very good reason to say the same thing. Screw this Calgary Flames team. Make them lose. Maybe not lose too much to the point that they end up getting into the top 10, but lose just enough that they could climb a few more spots up in that draft ranking without going too far over the edge. This is why we refer back to that Reddit post. The Calgary Flames have a 16% chance of making the playoffs. They also have an 8% chance of getting a top 10 pick, meaning the Habs have a 76% chance of getting a pick from 11 to 16. I don't know if that's necessarily how the math works, because the Flames making the playoffs 16 to 84, that's very direct, but I don't think you can just add the percentages and subtract it from 100 to get a total chance that the Habs get an 11 to 16 range pick. I just don't think that's how it works. Now, isn't it? I don't know. They have a pretty good chance, we can say that. The odds that the Calgary Flames get a top 10 pick are not very high. They would have to lose everything, pretty much, over the next few games. But at the same time, the odds that they actually continue winning and make the playoffs are pretty low too, so it's okay. Right? That's essentially what we're trying to get at here. This trade update between Calgary and Montreal is too complicated because of all those stipulations set 3 years ago in that first Sean Monahan trade, which worked hand in hand with the Matthew Tkachuk trade in one of the most dire periods of Calgary Flames history, where Johnny Gaudreau ended up leaving in free agency, Sean Monahan ended up leaving in a trade, and you also had Matthew Tkachuk, who wanted out too. There were so many guys that left the Calgary Flames that season. It was kind of a disaster when you think about the star power and the story. Just the guys that were leaving. Johnny Gaudreau, bless his soul, was a 100-point player, and so was Matthew Tkachuk. And they got rid of them both. That's crazy. Anyways, summer to remember for the Calgary Flames, but that trade with Sean Monahan in Montreal still is relevant today because of the draft pick. And I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this situation playing out the way it has with this pick and with the Habs odds at getting another nice prospect? Let me know in the comments what do you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.